I don't know if mine's quite as accomplished as Rogers is. I mean, look at that bad boy. I mean, that's Sam Elliott, but I think at the same time I might have a little bit more volume. His is a little more straight down. I'm a little more out with this guy. So
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to Monkey Knife Fight. I'm Dan Watkins. Week 4 of the college football season. It's here already. Before you know it, we'll be in November. We'll be talking, who's going to win the Heisman, all that kind of stuff. But joining me this week, as he always does during the college football season, John McKechnie of Rotowire.com. John, what's going on, man? Any overall thoughts on the college football season here before we get going into the DFS stuff?
well, first of all, we got a standalone Thursday night game. And with it officially being fall, it's long sleeve t-shirt season. I got my App State shirt on, baby.
Yeah.
Let's go Nears. I've been to Boone once, so I bought a t-shirt. So ergo, I'm an App State fan in perpetuity. I love those Nears. I do love Marshall too, though. So I'm very conflicted tonight. It's like watching my two children that I don't have going up against each other. But,
Are we getting into Thursday night Maction on this show? I was not planning for that, but I love it.
We're fun belting.
We're fun belting. Oh, Sun Belt. Excuse me. Fun belting. Oh my God. That's
I was really gonna get excited to put you guys on the spot, but there is no Maction, so I will talk to the product team. Maybe we can work that out next week.
Okay, yeah, we'll get that in the works. But otherwise, I feel like the theme from last weekend, at least, what was kind of what I would say as the sleepy giants, where you have Oklahoma, you have Clemson, Bama to an extent, even though their opponent was obviously very, very legit, but all just kind of slogging through their games last weekend. So, I mean, I think the Clemson scoring 14 points against Georgia Tech is like red alert. Like you have to be legitimately concerned about this Clemson offense, and they already have a loss on their resume. It's a matter of whether anyone else in the ACC can rise up. But it feels like what better year than this one if you're one of those also rans in the ACC to maybe come up and take the crown.
it seems like finally, after all these years of the whining and the complaining, that we're finally going to have some parity when it comes to the college football playoff. Obviously, we know Alabama's number one. I don't think anybody's knocking them off. We'll go probably more in depth on them next week. They got a huge matchup with Ole Miss, but for this week, they're playing another unranked team. Nick Saban, I think, is trying to win his 100th straight game against an unranked opponent, which is like, I think next up is like, I think Clemson or Notre Dame has like 45 in a row against unranked opponents, and they're next. So just Nick Saban and his powerhouse in Alabama. But I think this is a sneaky great slate this weekend. Next weekend, obviously, is the monster slate. You got like Notre Dame, Cincinnati, Ole Miss, Bama, all those kind of games next week. But this week, you got two top 25 matchups, which we'll get to. But you also have Florida trying to, are they going to have a letdown after last week? They sure surprised us after we kind of wrote them off against the Crimson Tide last week. But let's get right to it here. And let's start off kicking off at noon, that Fox Big Noon game, Notre Dame, Wisconsin, first meeting between the two schools since 1964. A lot of storylines in this one. They're playing at Soldier Field. Notre Dame's never lost at Soldier Field. I'll just throw that out there too, by the way. Jack Cohn, he was the guy in Wisconsin for 3 years, breaks his foot before the season last year. Graham Mertz takes over. No looking back for the Badgers. And they go right. And so Cohn transfers to Notre Dame, where he actually, I found out, was he was a lacrosse commit to go play at Notre Dame.
Yeah.
He ended up going.
I think he's a Long Island guy, so of course he's good at lacrosse.
Yeah, right. I mean, yeah, New York is a powerhouse when it comes to lacrosse. But anyways, Jack Cohn, more or less this week, is 250 and a half. He came out guns blazing against Florida State, and we're all like, oh, okay, the Irish might actually have a legit quarterback this year. He threw for 366 yards in that game, but he's regressed big time in the last 2 weeks. He had the game against Toledo. He finishes with just 239. He did have that dislocated finger that he popped back in and then threw that touchdown to Michael Meyer. And then last week against Purdue, they struggled as well. He's only completing 50% of his passes, 223 yards. So how do you feel about Jack Cohn going against his former team? A lot of his former teammates got a bit of a chip on his shoulder this week. How do you feel about Cohn?
Yeah, this was a tricky one to figure out. I want to lead it off by noting that it looks like it's going to be a beautiful day in Chicago on Saturday. So you figure that the passing games won't be too affected by that. I think when you look at the way that you can attack this Badgers defense, I think you got to go with the lesser of two evils. I think you got to go at them through the air and just count on your athletes, your Michael Myers, your Kevin Austins, to go ahead and set the tone through the air, because I think it's going to be next to impossible to run on Wisconsin. Almost any team is going to struggle with that, and I think Notre Dame, even with the backs that they have, are going to have trouble gaining traction. So I think that Notre Dame ends up leaning on Cohn's arm a little bit more this time around as far as that run pass split is concerned. And with that, I think 250 or more than 250.5 is in play. I know that the last 2 weeks have been discouraging, and you can almost throw the Florida State game out with the bathwater because of what they did against Jacksonville State and how they've looked just elsewhere. So that's obviously not impressive, but I think then you go to Narrative Street, and it is him going up against his old team. So give me the more for Jack Cohn.
I like the more as well. Wisconsin allowing just 161 passing yards per game, but that number brought down drastically by Eastern Michigan, who they played 2 weeks ago. Sean Clifford from Penn State threw for 247 on them, and I don't think that passing offense is anything spectacular. It's decent, not spectacular. And then another guy here in this matchup, if you're going to go over or more on Cohn, I think you got to go more on Michael Meyer as well. His more or less number is 55.5 in some of those secondary contests we have up on the MKF site. Michael Meyer, just one catch last week for 5 yards, but before that, 16 catches, 200 yards, and 3 touchdowns in the 2 weeks prior. So then on the other side, you got Graham Mertz, right? Wisconsin coming off the bye, they're going to play Notre Dame. They got that loss against Penn State. So with Wisconsin, if they're going to make the playoffs or make any noise here in the Big Ten, which appears to be fairly wide open this year with Ohio State struggles, they got to come out and they got to slam Notre Dame this weekend. And I think with Mertz, he's got to prove to their coaches that they went with the right guy. So his more or less number is just 160.5. Notre Dame is allowing 233 passing yards per game. Purdue just threw for almost 300 on them. And the Irish are also allowing 150. So how do you feel about Mertz this week?
You know, that number is so tantalizingly low, but I'm going with less. I really am. I think that Mertz, he's going to throw it anywhere between 20 and 25 times. I think that if Wisconsin's going to really make some noise on offense, it's going to be with their backfield tandem of Ches Malusi and Jalen Berger. I think that Mertz struggles in a lot of respects against tougher defenses. We saw it last year. We obviously saw it in that Penn State game. I think, a guy like Kyle Hamilton can just be a huge problem for Graham Mertz. Obviously, that's just one guy in that defense. But I think we're going to start to see the Notre Dame defense really just maybe take away the run game and try to make Mertz do it. But I don't think that Mertz is going to be up to the challenge. So I think that Mertz ends up with anywhere between 20 and 25 pass attempts and for a low yardage per attempt. So even though it's just 160.5, I'm taking less.
And I know you brought up Ches Malusi as well. How do you feel about him this week? His more or less number is 106.5. He finished with 144 and 120 in the 2 prior games for the Badgers. How do you feel about him hitting that number?
I think that we're going to see Berger get a little bit more involved this time around. I think that Malusi was the main guy against Penn State, and then that they both just kind of took turns destroying Eastern Michigan a couple weeks ago. So I think that Malusi is going to have a really good day, but I will take less than 106.5. I think that's just a little bit too spicy, especially if he's seeding carries.
All right, very good. Let's move on. Let's talk some SEC football. It's being billed as the Southwest Classic, being played at Jerry World AT&T Stadium in Texas. Texas A&M, number 7 versus number 16. Arkansas, before the season, you would have thought about this game and thought that Texas A&M would have just absolutely rolled over the Razorbacks, but Arkansas is playing some great football. They had that monster win over Texas a couple weeks ago. But let's talk about the Aggies right now. Zach Calzada, the backup quarterback, he's in now after Haynes King got hurt against Colorado. He's going to be out for a bit. Calzada's more or less number is 224.5. He hit that last week against New Mexico, throwing for 275. But my concern with Calzada, other than he's a backup, is that he only completes about 50% of his passes so far. He really struggled against Colorado, 18 of 38, not great at all for just 183 yards. And they have that 2-headed monster in the backfield as well with Isaiah Spiller and Devin Akane, who are both averaging over 6 yards per carry. How are you feeling about Calzada this week?
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that the Colorado game is the one you got to look at with a little bit more seriousness as to how it applies for this one, because I think A&M's third stringer could have done something close to that against New Mexico last week. New Mexico's just near the bottom of the barrel in all of college football. So I think that we're going to see, maybe something a little bit more efficient than what Calzada, he was kind of thrown into the fire against Colorado with Haynes King getting hurt in that one. So you can only blame him so much for that rough around the edges performance. I think he'll look a little bit better, play a little bit better in this one, but I still think that A&M ends up leaning on the ground game. I think this is going to be kind of a low tempo game, both sides grinding it out a little bit. So I like the less for Zach Calzada this week, and then of course, out of respect to that Arkansas defense with coached up by Barry Odom, they're pretty awesome in their own right. So I think they're going to limit what A&M does through the air.
Yeah, I think it's awesome what Barry Odom and Sam Pittman, the head coach in Arkansas, have done for this program. Just absolutely pulled it out of just like being completely irrelevant in the SEC and a complete afterthought in that SEC West. And this game could go a long way towards late in the year too, as well, when they're jockeying for the standings and all that kind of stuff and seeing who's going to what bowl game. On the other side, KJ Jefferson, it's the exact same, more or less total. Cue the Spider-Man meme at the pointing, we're exactly the same, 224.5. So this Aggies defense, as we mentioned, so they played Kent State, Colorado, and New Mexico. Not exactly, the running gun teams that are going to throw for a ton of yards on you. They're giving up just 77 yards per game through the air. KJ Jefferson, also, he's that dual threat guy, big, powerful runner, 6'4", 250. I think he's listed at second. He's run for 180 yards through 3 games. He's hit that 224.5 mark just once. He did it last week against Georgia Southern, who he threw for 366 yards and just 13 completions. So that shows you what kind of defense they've got there. And I think with Arkansas this week, it's their chance to prove they're for real, right? I mean, they win this week, they could be looking at a top 10 ranking going in. So how do you feel about KJ Jefferson?
Yeah, I just think that, like you said, the A&M best on paper, with the numbers, pass defense in college football. But again, they haven't really been tested. Not even Colorado has a legitimate quarterback really right now, or a legitimate passing game. So only so much you can really take away from that. But even still, I think that this is an offense that probably does its best when Jefferson is not needing to do it all. I think that we're going to see that ground game really get going for Arkansas, or at least that's what they're going to try to do. I think Jefferson and also this game should be close enough, in my opinion, to where that Arkansas doesn't need to abandon that run game. So I just don't think that Jefferson, and then with his dual threat capabilities in mind, using some of those snaps on design runs, I just think that we're going to see a relatively low passing volume day from Jefferson. So I like the lower on him as well. I think that this game, the story will be told offensively on the ground.
Yeah, and I think we're going to get a good one too. Without a doubt, Jimbo Fisher is going to be ready. He's been talking about up Arkansas all week about their super seniors. They got I think they have 3 or 4 6-year guys too on that squad that are ready to go. So Arkansas is going to be ready, and A&M will be as well. And I wouldn't be surprised either if there's an upset on Saturday in that one. Moving on to the Saturday night game, you got West Virginia at number 3 Oklahoma, a 7:30 kickoff in that one on ABC. The Sooners, we talked a lot about them last week. They got to prove something, man. I mean, they got that number 3 ranking, and as long as they keep winning, they'll be fine, but they got to put up some style points. And let's talk about Spencer Rattler. More or less 250.5. That number has just been dropping as the season has gone on. We talked about him last week, how he had to put up some style points to get himself back into the Heisman conversation. And he responds with just 214 yards through the air against Nebraska. His more or less total last week was 325.5. So over 100 yards less than that total. I mean, so far it's safe to say he's not living up to the hype right now through 3 games, and neither is this Sooners team. Lincoln Riley, his offense only putting up 23 points. That's the lowest total that they've ever put up since he's become the head coach. So how do you feel about Spencer Rattler against this West Virginia secondary, who Pro Football Focus ranks their defensive backs as the 5th best group in the country? How do you feel about it?
It's amazing what West Virginia has been able to do on the defensive side of the ball. They used to be kind of a sieve, and now they're getting those type of accolades, and that's with like a couple of guys transferring to bigger programs. Auburn and Georgia both got some of their guys from last year. But to Rattler, obviously he's been super disappointing so far. I think that no one would really argue that. I mean, he shredded Western Carolina, but like you're supposed to do that, so you don't get any credit for that. You don't count it twice. West Virginia's been tough, but they got kind of mossed by Maryland's passing game a few weeks ago, and this one being in Norman and knowing what these first 3 weeks have looked like for Oklahoma, if they're going to respond, if they're going to get things rolling this year and look like the Sooners team that should be prohibitive Big 12 favorites and a playoff contender, I think it starts this week. And I think all that in mind, 250.5 is just a low number for what we know Rattler can do, and therefore I will go with the more for Rattler.
Yeah, they're just baiting us in with that number this week.
They are
absolutely baiting us in. And how do you feel about Rattler right now when it comes to that Heisman race? There's still a lot of time left to go in the season, but Matt Corral is just absolutely on fire for Ole Miss. He's off this week though, so it's a good chance for Rattler. How do you feel about his Heisman chances here with about 2 months left to go?
Yeah, he's definitely dropped a decent bit. I don't have the odds right in front of me, but I still got to figure that Bryce Young's a good bit ahead of him. And like you said, Corral's probably trading ahead of Rattler as it stands right now as well. And, DJU has gone down. JT Daniels, he was kind of a sleeper for it. Obviously, he's not going to really challenge for that. So, yeah, I think that Rattler's still in the mix. It's a really wide open race right now. But he, you can't go a full month of unimpressive performances and still win the Heisman. I don't think so. It's got to be, put up or shut up time here eventually.
Most updated odds I think I found. I was looking for him on Ballybet, which is a shameless plug for our parent company, who we love dearly. But Ole Miss's QB Matt Corral at about 2-1, Bryce Young 2.5-1, CJ Stroud 16-1, and Rattler now sits in fourth at 18-1. Cincinnati's QB Desmond Ridder just rounds that out at 22-1 for your top 5.
Wow, so he dropped. I think Rattler was like 6-1 to start the season.
Yes, he was high up.
So, and then on the other side, you got Jarrett Deggy. His more or less number is 232.5. He's hit that in 2 of 3 games against Long Island University, who I didn't even know that they have a program. And
like a flash mob or something.
And against Maryland as well, he did throw for 277 against them. Oklahoma's defense, they got the pass rush, but as we know with them, the defensive backs they have a lot of problems there. They're giving up about 236 passing yards per game. Deggy does have to worry about, he's got redshirt freshman Garrett Green behind them, who's a dual threat option, which is what they want to do with their offense for the Mountaineers. But Deggy's more of a traditional pocket passer. Adrian Martinez nearly threw for 300 on Oklahoma last week. So how do you feel about Deggy? Because I think the volume is going to be there for him in this game.
Yeah, this is another tricky one to sort through. I got to go with less, though. I think that, we have Oklahoma just playing an altogether better game this week, and maybe the pass rush is something that affects Deggy enough to where they turn to that dual threat option or turn to the run game a little bit more with their star running back, Letty Brown. So I think that Deggy will end up with less than 232 passing yards, or 232.5. I do believe that. So I think Oklahoma's defense bows up this week, in addition to their offense stepping up as well.
Well, this is the week that the Sooners finally show up.
Otherwise, I'm gonna have to just hard fade them the rest of the year. So I'm putting a lot of stock in you, Boomer Sooners out there.
Oklahoma is back.
Very good.
They need to be.
Very good. And are there any other plays that are catching your eye this week, John? I think I got a couple for you too as well. But what do you think this week?
Let's see here. Malik Willis of Liberty. So love the menu of games that we have here for Monkey Knife Fight. I mean, he came into the year as a total dark horse candidate to win the Heisman. He's done well this year, but he hasn't quite lit it up to the extent he did last year. 228. Syracuse's defense is not terrible in my opinion. I think that they can kind of limit Willis, what he does through the air. I don't think Willis has all that impressive of options in terms of the passing game. So I'll take less on 228. And I think that, most of the damage that he ends up doing comes on the ground. I'm also interested in Malik Cunningham of Louisville. I don't have his number right in front of me, but I think it's like in the
I got it because he's one of my guys that I'm looking at too this week.
Yeah, I think that he can hit that against Florida State. I think Louisville will kind of take it to Florida State, honestly, and I think that they're going to be okay with Cunningham really putting up some big numbers in that one. He doesn't have a great set of pass catchers either, but I think he's talented enough to kind of overcome it. And I think that Florida State's secondary is more than accommodating for that one.
They're terrible. The Seminoles they are terrible, an absolute joke. They're giving up nearly 300 yards a game through the air. Jacksonville State almost dropped 250 on them. So I think Malik Cunningham can as well.
Yes,
he really impressed me a lot against UCF last week on that Friday night game, which was a lot of fun to watch. A couple guys that I have my eye on. I'm going to do it again. I'm going to do it again. This is the third time now that I've picked them. DJU. They're begging. We talked about Spencer Rattler, man, how they're just begging you. Clemson against NC State this week. His more or less number is 165.5. And I'm going to give you a Dabo quote just because I love quoting Dabo. He's just too talented. At some point, he's going to put it together, and those around him are going to play like they're capable of playing, and he'll see the fruits of his labor. I think this is the week that he's going to at least hit the more. I don't know if he's going to throw for 300 yards, but that number is just so low, man. They are begging you to take it, and I'm a sucker for it. For DJ Ueagule, NC State giving up 188 per game to far worse quarterbacks this year. So I think DJU can hit that number. And then my second guy, Cade McNamara, his more or less number is 150.5 against Rutgers this weekend. I'm going less. This is the number of attempts he's had in 3 games, 11, 15, and 11. There's 37 attempts through 3 games, just not enough volume with that Michigan offense. They are the number 1 rushing team in the country, and I think they're going to get out ahead of Rutgers, and I think they're just going to absolutely pound them and pound the rock this weekend. Blake Corum, I like his more, 98.5. He's averaging almost 8 yards a carry. Love that number as well. So, and with him, his lowest total so far this year is 111 yards rushing. So I really like that less there for McNamara because I just don't think Michigan's going to throw the ball.
Yeah, that's totally fair. And, Rutgers gets after the quarterback too. So, I mean, if there is sort of a leak in the boat as far as Michigan's concerned, maybe they don't want to expose McNamara to that pressure, and then they just lean into their strength, which is apparently just being a knockoff option team almost at this point, at least as far as their offensive mentality is concerned.
Yeah, they play a bully ball style kind of. And the only one thing that's concerning me, Rutgers' top cornerback got suspended by Greg Schiano this week because of a paintball incident on campus. So he's a freshman. I mean, you got to worry about that. Those are bound to happen. That's the mark that Rutgers is getting back to real program status. You're not a real program unless you have some sort of pellet gun or paint gun sort of incident that ends up in the newspaper and people on the internet laugh about. Absolutely. And before we sign off here, I want to put it out to the people. Since we have John every week and he has this wonderful mustache. Better mustache, week 1, Aaron Rodgers. When he used to have that mustache, I think that photo's from last year. Now he's kind of got the full beard thing going on. So once Jay pulls this up for us, better stash, Aaron Rodgers or John McKechnie. John, you can make your case for how great your mustache is.
I don't know if mine's quite as accomplished as Rodgers is. I mean, look at that bad boy. I mean, that's Sam Elliott. But, I think at the same time, I might have a little bit more volume. His is a little more straight down. I'm a little more out with this guy. So I'll go to bat for myself. I got to respect my opponent, of course, in this spot. Rodgers, very accomplished gentleman, both on the football field and with his facial hair and his Instagram posts. But vote for your boy. Vote for your boy.
I'm voting for you as well. I mean, I just don't want to vote for Aaron Rodgers. Straight up. So,
hopefully that will work towards me, and other viewers will kind of have that feeling as well. I think that will.
Very, very good. And I think that's going to be it for us this week. John, where can they follow you?
You can follow me on Twitter at Johns_tailgate. Lots of silly, frivolous tweets over there, mostly about sports, but sometimes other things. And then you can find my college football stuff over at rotowire.com/cfootball. You can find all of our projections, rankings, lineup optimizers, all that good stuff over there.
Great. Awesome. Well, thanks very much, guys. You can follow me at Dan Watkins Radio on Twitter. We'll be back next week with a monster slate, college football week 5, but have some fun in these week 4 matchups. I think it's a sneaky, great slate this weekend. So don't forget to hit that subscribe button on the MKF YouTube page, and have a good weekend.